The film begins with a clear postmodern irony. Paul rummages through a pile of junk, scavenging for something useful. A man runs down an alley as alarm sirens blare in the background. Military patrols are visible, and gunshots are heard. Once in the countryside, Paul casts a final glance at the smoke-engulfed city and heads to a shelter where he has hidden 2 screaming infants. 15 years pass. Paul lives with his teenage sons and a dog in a remote area, cut off from the world by a deep crevice in the earth. One day, Thomas almost fails to return before dark from neighboring Rose's farm, which frightens his father. At home, the 3 of them meticulously close the windows with shutters from the inside, securing them with bolts for safety, and then they dine. At the table, Paul warns his son that if he is late again, he will no longer be allowed beyond the property's boundaries. Joseph provokes his brother with questions about their interest in the neighbors, leading to a minor argument. Their father authoritatively quells it. The remainder of the evening is spent playing chess. When the dog begins scratching the floor, Paul and Thomas go downstairs. Suddenly, someone tries to break through the boarded-up door, forcing them to barricade it. When the noise subsides, the man cautiously peers through a peephole, seeing no one. Joseph, who stayed upstairs, reports that the uninvited guest had tried to break the door down in 3 attempts. In the morning, they see huge claw marks on the door. As they pry off the damaged board to replace it, Paul discovers a pile of giant cockroaches. During the day, the family goes about their usual activities. Joseph is eager to indulge in his hobby in the shed, but his father first instructs him to chop wood. Later, Paul visits his son, who is working on a car. They discuss the incident, supposedly caused by environmental pollution. Some creatures had come to cleanse the planet of humanity. The father believes that enough people have survived to eventually reunite, and sooner or later they will be rescued from this farm. When Paul helps start the engine based on experience, they, taking Thomas with them, set off on a trip. Afterward, Thomas wants to run to Rose's farm, but his father first instructs him to gather supplies using the car, and the visit can wait until tomorrow. On the way, Thomas accuses Joseph of needing supervision. The brothers argue, agreeing eventually to split up and meet at sunset. Thomas heads to the farm, where he is supposedly to finish repairing a table. In reality, the reason for his visit is the farmer's daughter, Charlotte. The girl takes him to a tree where she used to play as a child, using a rope tether to extend the radius allowed by her parents. There, they discuss possible scenarios of the apocalypse, either a poisonous fog or an infection from an unknown virus transmitted by insect bites. They embrace goodbye. The sun is already nearing the horizon. Meanwhile, Joseph is on the riverbank, picking through a grounded, abandoned ship. Descending into the hold, he finds, besides supplies, a nest of large bugs, the same kind that swarmed the door at night. Their presence forces the boy to retreat. On the shore, the car struggles to start, making the boy anxious and causing him to count on his fingers how much time remains until sunset. Joseph drives back, unaware that Thomas, attempting to jump over the crevice, slipped and hit his head on a rock, subsequently falling down. Not waiting for his brother, the driver returns home alone. Paul orders the house to be locked up alone and, grabbing a backpack with supplies, sets out to search for his wayward son, promising to return by morning. Armed with a knife, the man, along with his faithful dog, heads into the forest. Thomas regains consciousness at the bottom of the ravine. He tries to find an exit, illuminating the way with a piezoelectric lighter, but to no avail. Hearing the rustling of awakened creatures, Thomas pulls out a penknife, but it doesn't save him from a monster's attack, thrusting a paw through a hole in the ground. Help arrives in time as his father, hearing the commotion, attacks and kills the beast before descending to his son with a torch. Making sure that the offspring is not seriously injured, the man decides to stay in the cave until dawn, blocking the passage with stones to prevent creatures from getting through. At home, Joseph dozes off in a chair, not noticing that the viewing window had opened from the outside. A long paw of the monster intrudes through the gap, audaciously reaching for the boy with clawed fingers. The sharp claws extend to indecent lengths. It manages to open the shutters from the inside to get into the house through the window, but this turns out to be a clever trap set by the crafty boy. He captures the uninvited guest in a homemade cage dropped from the ceiling. In the cave, Paul instructs his son to remove one of the stones from the debris to check if any monsters have collapsed. But barely sticking his hand with the torch through, he is attacked and drops the light source. At that moment, the ground underfoot begins to give way, as if someone is digging an undercut below. The man lights a flare and then shoves a gas canister into the hole. Instructing Thomas to press against the wall, Paul knocks the cap off the canister, causing an explosion. Looking out the window in the morning and not seeing his relatives, Joseph sets off in the car to search for them. Thomas digs out the resulting landslide, pulling out his injured father, while the faithful dog, having found the brother, indicates where to go. Joseph and his brother load the injured father onto the cart and head home, where they carry Dad to the bedroom. Confused and tormented by guilt, Thomas learns that his brother caught one of the monsters at night. Joseph covers the box with fabric and does not allow it to be removed so as not to harm the captive unnecessarily. It will be useful for study. Treating the father's wounds, Thomas suggests that they get rid of the prisoner to eliminate a potential threat. The brothers approach the cage with a knife, but because of another quarrel, they simply release the creature outside. It fearfully hides under the bed, away from the light. When the monster emerges, the dog that ran into the room attacks it, provoking a counterattack. Joseph presses the weakened creature to the floor with a mop, and Thomas, grabbing an axe, chops off its head. Practical Thomas wonders if the monster can be consumed as food. Joseph performs an autopsy to understand how the creature is structured. His brother distracts him from his work in the liver. He suggests transporting their father to Rose's company, where there are adults and medicines. Joseph doubts that strangers will want to help them, but Thomas insists. Loading their father into the truck bed, the brothers head to the neighbors. Charlotte's parents immediately turn them away. They don't have enough supplies to waste on strangers. Mrs. Rose allows Thomas to stay with them, but his brother and father must return to their own home. Disappointed, Joseph walks to the car. When Thomas runs after him, he accuses him of negligence, which is killing their father. The argument escalates into a fight. Thomas nearly strangles his brother, but comes to his senses in time. Coughing, Joseph leaves, while Thomas stays at his girlfriend's farm, where he is offered something to eat. However, the boy has to force himself to swallow. Afterwards, they retreat to a room assigned to him, but an unexpected visit from the girl's father spoils all the romance. On his way home, Joseph notices that the sheep in the pasture are behaving strangely, as if something has scared them. Additionally, near the house, a furrow in the ground leads to the basement entrance. After dragging the injured father into the house, the young man walks around the house, tapping the floor to check for hollows beneath. When it's time to close the windows and doors, Joseph suddenly falls into a pit in the middle of the kitchen, dug by cunning monsters. Charlotte finds Thomas rummaging through drawers. He is looking for medicine for his father, not wanting to stay as a guest and abandon his family. Although there is little time until sunset, he convinces his girlfriend to share the medications, which she reluctantly does, unaware that one of the workers is eavesdropping on their conversation. Having obtained the pills, Thomas runs home, but a watchman with a shotgun ambushes him on the road. The farm workers tie up Thomas, accusing him of theft. The man who caught him threatens with the shotgun, threatening to shoot his leg, but suddenly falls into the ground in a fresh pit. A monster jumps out of the hole following him. Hearing the noise, Charlotte's father wants to check what is happening, but monsters have already invaded the home. Surprised by the sudden attack, the man drops a candle, which ignites a fire. The mother runs to warn her daughter, but a monster catches up with her, knocks her to the floor, and subjects her to a biological infection, possibly for reproduction. Frightened, Charlotte steps out of the room into the hallway, where she sees a bloody trail on the floor. It leads to a monster, frozen in a strange pose, still alive, but seemingly disemboweled. In the barn, Thomas asks the workers to untie him while they are dragged off one by attacking creatures. Abandoning the captive, the men run outside, but there rolls in a fresh batch of monsters. The youth manages to break a wooden bar to which he was tied, but a monster already snaps its hungry jaws in front of him. Suddenly, its head explodes into pieces. To the side appears Charlotte with a shotgun. Grabbing the medicine, the teenagers run out into the night, illuminated by flashes of fire from the burning house. Joseph carefully seals the hole in the floor with furniture and household items when he hears a knock on the door. Hammer in hand, he goes to check. Suddenly, the peephole opens, and outside, Thomas's hand gropes for the latch. The brother and his girlfriend climb into the house through the window, recounting what happened. The brothers awkwardly reconcile as Paul comes to. Joseph informs him of the events, asking what they should do now. Logically, the father advises them to fight back. Following his guidance, the teenagers, under Joseph's leadership, head to the barn. From there, they transport canisters of gasoline into the house and store them in the refrigerator. While Joseph prepares a trap, spreading gasoline around and making a detonator from a smoldering cigarette, Thomas and Charlotte barricade the kitchen to prevent the monsters that have emerged from the pit from immediately scattering throughout the house. Soon, the creatures begin their assault, shaking the debris over the hole in the floor. Thomas with a knife and Charlotte with a shotgun wait for the monsters near the kitchen door. When the first one climbs through the boarded-up door, the boy stabs it and the girl blows the head off the second one. Then they run upstairs where Joseph is putting the final touches on the trap. Paul, having recovered, comes out of the bedroom and, taking the shotgun from the girl, shoots to create a hole down to the first floor. Then the man stands in the doorway, silently strikes the guest with a bat. When one critter breaks through, the brothers beat it down with makeshift materials. Dad almost sheds a proud tear. The teenagers head to the bedroom, where a shelter has been made out of the refrigerator. Paul locks the door from the outside to delay the creatures. The monsters break down the door and burst into the room, but then the fire reaches the gasoline, and an explosive reaction follows. The teenagers wait it out inside the freezer, which eventually tips over. Emerging outside, they try to find their father among the ruins. Suddenly, a burning hand breaks through the debris. Frightened, the teenagers run to the car. Hastily starting the engine, they drive away from the burning house where they spent their brief lives. The surviving monsters pursue them, grouped into an infernal burning wheel. Charlotte fires from the shotgun before the terrifying chase disintegrates. Stopping to catch their breath, the teenagers see the mesmerizing sight of the starry sky for the first time in their lives. In the morning, gathering the remains, they bury their parents under Charlotte's tree. Then, deciding what to do next, the teenagers get into the car and set off in search of other survivors like them. Behind the car stretches Charlotte's old rope tether, which snaps from tension, a symbolic umbilical cord. Now they are on their own. The car drives off into the distance along with the joyful dog running alongside. The film ends here.